On this week's episode of the Coaching Lab podcast, we've got two fabulous guests, Dr. Brad Cooper and Suzy Destarac, who will be talking about core elements of building a sustainable coaching practice. If you have been feeling uncertain or overwhelmed by business, marketing, or sales and want practical, approachable steps to begin or grow a coaching practice with your values in mind, this episode is for you. With these two distinguished individuals at the helm of today's conversation, I have no doubt that you'll be walking away with some actionable steps and inspiration for what's next for you and your journey in business, whatever that looks like. And if you're new to the podcast, my name is Leigh Baker, and I am a board-certified health and wellness coach and the VP of Growth and Development of Catalyst Coaching, the nation's top-rated NBHWC-approved health, wellness, and performance coaching institute. We've been training coaches since 2007. So if you've been thinking about pursuing certification or are already a coach looking for a strong community, we're here for you. Reach out anytime with questions at results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Now for the good stuff. So Suzy and Brad, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I'm really excited to be in this space because I'm actually your host of today's podcast, and I get to interview of sorts Dr. Brad Cooper and Suzy Destarac.
You got it.
This episode is kind of on the sustainable practices for business building and core elements to do that. So we know that many coaches feel confident in their coaching skills, but when it comes to the business side of things, that's where they start to feel intimidated or overwhelmed or even a little bit of imposter syndrome. So today we want to simplify things and show what sustainable, approachable business building can look like. So I'm really excited to have you both here. And I know we're going to have a lot of golden nuggets along the way. But I'd love for listeners to kind of understand what lens you're coming into this with. So kind of where you are in business and what you're currently doing so that when you are giving all of these tidbits and knowledge and experience, people kind of know what lens that's coming from.
Perfect. Suzy, you want to take it away?
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you, Leigh. I am so excited to do this as well. And I wish I would have had something like this to fall back on when I was first starting my coaching practice. So, I will say just a little bit about myself. So I am a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. I have a very split practice in that I teach cooking classes to a variety of people, parents and kids, as well as businesses. And then I also am a wellness coach, and I also do some leadership coaching. So I kind of split my time in those two ways, and I'm excited to share some more details about that with our audience.
Yeah, and I think it's a great combo, Leigh, for the two of us to be going through this because Suzy and I obviously overlap in a lot of different ways, but we also have completely different perspectives. I come at it, I went back and got an MBA after physical therapy school, 25 years ago or so, and really loved the business concepts and ended up teaching for a decade around the country on a variety of different things, including something I called intrapreneurship. And I did not create that name, but it's essentially creating a business within your business. So instead of entrepreneurship, it's intra. And so I would go around to different companies and help the employees see how they don't have to leave their company. They could build something new and exciting that really sparked their heart from within the company. And I wasn't doing it myself. So outside of my speaking business, I was working as a VP of operations, managing a bunch of clinics around the country. And certainly that's business too, but not this solo practitioner type setting. So in 2007, long story, some of you have heard it before, I won't go into it now, but Susanna and I launched what at the time was called U.S. Corporate Wellness and has become Catalyst Coaching Institute. And we've been super, super fortunate. Our timing was good. We had an amazing team. And as a result of some things falling into our lap and some hard work, we ended up coaching literally hundreds of thousands of people over the last 20, this is our 20th year coming up here in 2026. So that's my perspective, a little bit different than Suzy's. And I think it'll be a nice overlap between the two of us of brainstorming where we stumbled, where we found some opportunities, and how we kept doing it through the highs and lows. Because this is a roller coaster ride, and anyone listening to this, if you forget that component, you're going to struggle, because it just is. Like, you're going to have your best day ever and your worst day ever potentially on the same day. And that's just part of running your own business.
100%. And being a business owner myself, I would say that, the successful days keep us going and the challenges humble us. So,
Totally.
And having both of those experiences are profound and have an impact on where we go in life and in business. So
for sure,
I'm super excited to have this perspective of like business and adaptation and growth, and then also private practice and having a multitude of different things that you're working on, which speaks to a lot of coaches who are working on maybe private practice and a few other things, right? A few other hats of pieces in the wellness space. So with our first kind of core element of business is this idea of like a clear coaching identity or clear business identity. And, I think this core element speaks to this idea of like understanding kind of how your values are associated with what you do, and having a clear understanding of how that connects to your passion and your business strategy, right? So how did you all find clarity in like who you help, how you help them, and what you're doing now?
Oh, wow. That's a really fun question. I think that this got me hung up in the beginning because I felt like I had to have, like, there had to be this one area and I had to know what it was. And I was going to be a total game changer in the world in that area. And what I found is that while I did have the need to just become aware of my values and aware of my strengths and things like that, it wasn't just going to be a clear path from like, okay, I'm going to find this out and then I'm going to, reach out to the right kind of people and everything's going to fall in place. It was just kind of, a road that just has meandered along. So I guess, having a niche area is what, I think that's kind of the term that gets thrown around. And I think now I can see that there is a pretty clear, passionate area that I have based on my own background of being a mom. And that has got to be just family well-being and especially around family nutrition. But yeah, that's kind of an initial thought that I had. But Brad, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the messages coaches are getting varies across the board. You're going to have some people that say you've got to go deep or you'll fail. And you'll have other people that say, no, you should go wide and cast a wide net. And let me just tell you, there's not a right answer, but there's your right answer. And so I remember when we first started, I would go to every networking event possible to try to meet the folks that were hiring organizations like ours to provide this coaching for their employees, which was our focus for 20 years. And I'm not kidding, folks. People would always say, who's your target audience? The typical question. And I'd say, honestly, companies with checks, because we needed to pay the bills. And so, yeah, we had our perfect client in our mind. We knew our vision of where we hoped the future went, but you've got bills to pay. And sometimes that means stepping into things that are not your central piece. And so I think one of the things I encourage folks to do is just whiteboard your loves, your hobbies, your work experience, et cetera, and just play with it. Take that thing and just write down, oh, I love this and this and this and this and this. And then just start seeing, how could I draw a line from that to coaching? Oh, I love coaching my son's soccer team. Okay, cool. How many parents need coaching desperately? They're overworked. They're running around 17 different directions. They're grabbing fast food on the run. Like, that could be a great coaching business. And I just made that up as we're talking here. So just draw those lines from whatever you love doing and then see where the opportunities are. And then, big point here, you don't get to decide. There's a combination of your heart and the marketplace. Neither one win. They both win if everything goes well, but you want something that inside you say, oh, this Like this is me. I'm living me out. This is the best version of me as a coach. This is great. And the market has to say, we'll pay you for that. And when you can bring those two together, that's doesn't always happen, folks. And there's that roller coaster we talked about before. Suzanne and I have gone through periods where we've just been on fire and it's just been perfect. And the marketplace has been very positive about the services we're offering. And other times it hasn't been. And so then we're struggling and we're like, how do we? So yes, heart and marketplace, but don't ignore either one of those.
That is really good. I like that, Brad. And then the other piece that came to mind here is keep your mind open to opportunities, because I never dreamed that I'd be doing some of the things that I'm doing now, but it was just kind of like I had a little bite. I took the next step.
Totally.
I did the next call. I, followed up. I did a good job, stayed in touch with my values and not getting too tied up into some of the outlandish, I think, advertising schemes that are out there to attract coaches, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. Keep exploring, because what we do today is very different than what we did originally. And simple example, when we launched in 2007, our company was U.S. Corporate Wellness. We were going to do all the corporate stuff. We were going to have biometrics and HRAs and coaching and portals and contests and apps and all this stuff. And we did, and it worked. But over time, companies started saying to us, and here's your exploration piece, companies started saying, we don't really need your biometrics, but your coaching's amazing. Your HR is okay, but your coaching's amazing. Your portal, but your coaching's amazing. Could we just hire? And so that's when we transitioned over time from U.S. Corporate Wellness to Catalyst Coaching. So be listening, as Suzy's saying there, be listening, be tuned in, and listen, again, heart and marketplace. If you ignore either one of those two, you're not going to be able to sustain your success over time.
So I hear, be willing to explore, lean into what's working well, and adapt based on opportunities that feel like they're in alignment with what you enjoy or what the market is giving you feedback on.
Correct.
Yeah. And you lead us perfectly into our second core element, which is building sustainability, right? Like when we think about all of these, you guys are talking about like exploration and creativity and kind of leaning into feedback you're getting from corporations or their marketplace. And that can feel like a lot when you're like, okay, I've got all these ideas and all of these opportunities and like, how can it be sustainable? So I'm curious kind of what things looked like when you first started, like the services or like offerings, and how did you land on starting there? And what did you learn about sustainability of business along the way?
Yeah, go ahead, Brad. Well, I'm curious to hear your take on this.
So a few things, and some of the things I'll say, you'll be like, uh-oh, it's okay. Like tomorrow's a new day. Maybe you hear a couple things and you're like, okay, I could have done better to set this up. But optimally, and you've probably heard this from other business places, but cash flow drives everything. And if you can't cover your expenses, you're not gonna be doing this very long. So on a personal level, Suzanne and I, and our kids will joke about this now, but we never went out to eat. We never went on vacation. Our vacations were a 15-hour drive to Little Rock, Arkansas to see family twice a year, every single year. The kids grew up, that was their fun stuff. So if you can come into it without debt or limited debt, your opportunities are substantially higher than if you're trying to figure out how to pay off 3 credit cards, a mortgage you shouldn't have bought in the first place, and a car loan. So again, maybe you're listening to that and going, oh, doggone it. I get it. Start today. How can we start trimming that down? So, but the more you can limit your front end expenses that have nothing to do with your business, the better off you are and the longer runway you create for yourself. Folks, it took us 6.5 months before we had our first client. You don't think I was nervous?
Gosh.
You don't think I was freaking out? And 2 kids on their way to college about 4 years later, like a house pay, like Yes, I was scared. I was nervous. And 6.5 months, nothing. And then it went. But had we not been super, super, super careful with our money on a personal side, we wouldn't have had a 6-month runway. We might have had a 2-month or a 3-month. So that's a big one. And then once you get your business going, there's two things. One is overhead. Overhead is the great killer of small businesses. Yes, there are so many wonderful sounding things. Oh, I need a new computer. Do you? Or would you like a new? Like, could we get by with the old computer for a couple more years? Oh, I need a new desk. Do you? I need an office that I lease. Do you? Like, we started from our kitchen table. Our kids knew when the phone rang and it was a potential client, I'd yell, phone, and they'd grab the dog, turn down the music, stop dancing for 3 minutes while I was on the phone. And like, that's just what they grew up with. And they were, let's see, 11, 13, and 15 when we started the business. So it was a fun time. They learned the business with us, but we were at our kitchen table. Like that's what we did because we did. And it's great. And we had a great run for a little while and we're like, let's buy a building. Or in your case, maybe you're thinking, I'm going to lease office space now. I'm so glad we didn't because we had some down years too. And we could not have afforded to continue our business. But because our overhead was almost zero, we were able to sustain ourselves, keep our team together through those dry years. So I think those are the big ones from our end of things.
Oh, wow, that is so neat. And a couple of thoughts that I have here. First of all, I don't have the size business as what you and Susanna have built there at Catalyst Coaching Institute, as well as Catalyst Coaching 360. I'm on a smaller scale. It's me, like right. I'm a solopreneurship.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I leveraged is being able to partner with other bigger wellness companies, and that was great. And the thing that really opened the door to that was getting that nationally board certified for health and wellness coaching. So that was just a huge game changer. I invested in myself, mainly time and my hopes and dreams, invested in that and got really, just really committed to learning the skills of being a good coach and getting that certification. And that opened up doors. The other piece that has been super helpful for me personally is to diversify, kind of like we diversify our investments. I have really diversified in my business. So Beautiful. I have a lot of different arms of my business. And not only do I love that because maybe I'm a little bit ADHD, I'm not sure, but I like having all those different, like my hands in a lot of different things.
That's awesome. And I love what you said about the partnership piece. Folks, don't miss what Suzy's saying there. We don't have to do everything ourselves. If you can partner with a rec center, a health club, a physician's office, small companies, I think are a great opportunity for coaching practices because no one's serving the under 50 or under 80 employee company. Nobody is serving those companies. So there's a big need there. However, my big statement there is with these partnerships, focus on what's in it for them. Not me, not you, them. So you go to that rec center, don't talk about how great you are as a coach and all these wonderful things. How are they going to make more money? How are they going to get more members? How are they going to keep their members? Because the churn rates, using rec centers or health clubs as an example, the churn rates at health clubs is astronomical. So if you can influence their churn rate, their turnover rate, their lack of re-upping of members by 5%, wow, you got their attention. So think about how can you come in. You're a great coach. You're going to have a huge impact. You're going to change lives. We know that. They don't get that. But they get how you're going to help their bottom line. So in these partnerships, be thinking, how can you, and it's not always money in terms of more members. It might be that lack of churn. That's worth the members.
Yeah, you bring up this idea of like value proposition, which I also feel like it became a buzzword in like the private practice or business space of like value proposition, niche. And it's just really this idea of meeting people in organizations where they are and serving a need that they have and focusing it on them, knowing that we're going to bring a lot to the table,
Yes.
right? So, and we don't have to pitch that, but it's more so what's the impact that that's going to have for them.
Right. Totally.
How did you all start to become visible in those conversations, in those spaces? Like, organizations, like I think, Suzy, you mentioned, partnering with organizations to then be able to provide coaching services or opportunities to promote well-being within different populations. And Brad, you were speaking to like working with larger corporations and corporate wellness and adapting that over time. So yeah, I'm curious, visibility, like what does that look like? And
yeah, visibility. Well, I think we're talking about on a really large industry level, and then we're talking kind of more on a boutique-y kind of coaching level that I have. I would say for me, there have been a couple of things that have been really supportive. One of them is my contacts and my networking, just abilities to build a network, maintain that network. A couple of things when it comes to visibility that I think for my coaching practice has really helped. One is a consistent networking group. And so you don't have to go join a big networking group, but even keeping in contact with the people that you make connections with and keep those going, because you never know where those are going to come from. A good example is about half of my business right now came from a connection that was out of the blue, that somebody connected me with another wellness company like 12 years ago. Didn't start out as much. Now, post-COVID, it's a lot of what I do, and it absolutely has blossomed for me. So just keeping up with those connections, I think, was really important for visibility for me. That was one aspect. How about you, Brad? Where are you going with that?
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit for me is speaking and writing. So if you can get to conferences, you're probably not going to get paid. Every once in a while, you'll get paid for something, but even if you can get in front of, and it's your target audience. So it could be a SHRM conference, Society for Human Resource Managers in our case, but it might be a MOPS group or a leadership meeting or a sales group or whatever it might be. I think the biggest thing to remember is you don't need thousands of clients. If we have 10 companies that love us, we're good. If you have 30 coaching clients that love you, you're probably overwhelmed, frankly. So keeping those things in mind, you don't need to be all things to all people. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to have a post every 15 seconds that shows up on Instagram. That is some people's strategy. So I'm not minimizing that. I'm just saying, don't feel like you have to do that if that's not you, because there are other options. So the speaking, the writing. And then it's funny, our first client came as a result. I enjoy endurance sports. So I've done 11 Ironmans and a bunch of marathons and that kind of stuff. And our first client, I was doing a half Ironman in a local city, and I just contacted the race director and said, we do this thing. Could we throw a flyer? Like, we had no clients at the time, by the way. Could we throw a flyer into your race packet, pay you for the, he's like, oh, sure, Coop, pay me $500 and bring me the flyers and we'll stick them in the race. That's how we got 2 of our first 5 clients. This random, just because I was competing, because they'd be like, oh, we know Brad. Oh, yeah, well, he's whatever. And so don't blow off the things. I mentioned the soccer coaching thing earlier. Don't blow those off. Suzy mentioned this relationship she developed resulted in a significant part of her business. Don't blow those off. Lean into who you are. That's, again, that heart and the marketplace combining may surprise you. It's not always that lucky. We got lucky, there's no doubt. But what's the old saying? The harder you work, the luckier you get.
I was just going to say, I think if you keep working, if you keep working, you keep doing things, and you stay committed. Oh my gosh, it's so easy to just lose the commitment level. I see that with a lot of people where they just drop off because the first 5 people they talk to were not interested. Totally. And it's in some ways it's a little bit of a numbers game.
It's not in some ways. It's a numbers game. It just, your depth of relationships changes the ratio of those numbers.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. Good way to put it. And being about others.
Yes.
Suzy, you bring up this good point of when people put themselves out there, like they're marketing or they're starting these relationships and conversations, and they're not being met with what they're hoping for, right? They're not finding clients, or they're not getting the yes from the corporation to start corporate wellness programs, and it starts to feel defeating. So I'm wondering what helped you navigate those no's to ultimately land to where you are, and navigating through the more challenging times.
Yeah, well, I'll say, I mean, I don't feel like I have it all figured out, Leigh, but I think what I was always very committed. For me, in my business was so important to me because as a single mom, I wanted to be there when my kids got home from school. And I needed that just provided such a fire for me to make this work and just kind of try different angles and things. And I also was really, I have just always been really passionate about when you see results and when you see what, you get these little glimmers of like what coaching can do for people. And it just stokes the fire, I guess. But yeah, so I kind of forgot what your original question was, but.
Well, you speak to this.
Oh, you were talking about visibility or?
We were talking about visibility, but I want to pause because you bring up this good point of like what has motivated you to stay on track when things are challenging and when things go well. And it's the why, which we talk about in the coaching world a lot, right? Like the why behind making a change, the why behind continuing to show up for our business. And you're bringing up like your why, like you wanting to be there for your kids and family, and also the positive impact that you see when you are working alongside a client and you do see them in their success. And so those things, it sounds like, motivate you to continue moving forward. And when you get those like no's, or when when your expectation doesn't meet the reality of what happens sometimes in business, those things keep you moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So those things do definitely keep you grounded and keep you moving. And when you hit those no's, it's just, gosh, you gotta put your athlete hat on and just be like, you gotta have a really short memory when it comes to those, and just next, keep on going, keep moving forward. And I know it sounds easier than it sounds easy thing to do. Just keep moving, moving forward towards the yeses. But you also are building this muscle of consistency and learning something. Well, what went wrong with that one? Let's reflect on it. How can we make that better? What room can we be in to present to that's going to be better?
100%. And yeah, we were talking about the visibility piece and like what feels authentic to you, right? And showing up in these spaces. And then we kind of went through to like when you do feel defeated in business. So there's these two things, right? There's visibility of showing up in a marketing room or a co-working, networking event. And there are also those times that feel maybe misaligned with what your expectation is, or they just don't feel great. And so I think then we talked a little bit about like how to navigate that, like when things don't go well, or things, just don't land the way that you wanted them to, in an event or an experience. But with visibility, like what ideas or words of encouragement would you have for like a coach who's maybe just starting in private practice or building a business in showing up and being visible in ways that feel authentic, keep them motivated, and feel like they're moving the needle forward in business?
Well, I'll just step in with a comment about we want to feel authentic, and we don't want to use authenticity as an excuse not to learn how to do sales and marketing, because I see that a lot too. I don't like sales and marketing. I've never met any. Well, I've met a few people. Very few people are like, yeah, I love sales. It's so cool. No, we all kind of. So yes, be authentic. Market and do your sales in an authentic manner, but don't let yourself off the hook for saying, well, I can't do sales because I'm a coach and I care about people. If you don't learn sales, you're not going to do any coaching and no one benefits. So stop using that excuse and get in there and learn how to do what a business owner does. So that's one thing. And then I think Susanna reminds me of this all the time. Coaching and sales, if the sales are done in an authentic manner, are basically the same thing. You're helping that person, whether it's an individual coaching client or a HR director or a benefit consultant or whoever it might be, just put on your coaching hat and talk through what matters to them and how you can help, because that's the whole thing, right? If we can help them improve their lives, and if they run their business or their HR or whatever, you're helping them improve their department or their thing that they're in charge of, you're coaching them. And now they're experiencing the value of that. So I'm saying don't use authenticity to let yourself out the hook, but I'm also saying you already know how to do this. You've already got this. You're a trained coach, especially if you're nationally board certified. You get the whole concept of intrinsic motivation, and doesn't help to tell somebody they need coaching in their company or they need coaching in their life. Just coach, and you're going to get clients out of that. So, and then the other thing I jotted down as you were talking about that is if you can reduce your penalty for the no's. As Suzy was talking, I was just laughing because yes, totally. You've got to just have this short-term memory, the Ted Lasso, goldfish concept of you forget, a billionth of a second later what happened just now. I don't know if I've had a million no's, but it's definitely in the 100,000 range. And you just got to move on. You just got to remember that what Leigh was talking about. Why are we doing this? We're changing people's lives for the better, or better yet, we're helping them change their lives for the better. And it's amazing when you get to wake up and do that every day. So the no's, they just expect them. Expect 99 out of every 100, and then go from there.
Well said, Brad. That is very well said. You're making me think of a million other places that I could reach out for my own business right now, because it's exciting the impact that we get to have.
Oh, so.
Suzy, it's funny you said that because, when you're having like conversations with people that light you up, like if you're thinking about like going into like the marketing space or like the, business after hours per se, and you're like, oh gosh, like what am I doing here? How am I going to talk to people? And we're having a conversation now, and Suzy, you were like, now I've got more ideas. So it's like lean into like those spaces that you do feel are supportive of your process of like creativity and boosting your confidence. And you all have talked about like, don't use like, oh, I want to be authentic, I want to be real and value centered to cop out of those things, but lean into them, be yourself. And you'll find that the conversations you have open up additional opportunities for you, is like what I'm kind of hearing you guys say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Very well said. Yes.
And I'm thinking about there's the old elevator pitch thing, and I'm not against elevator pitches, but I'm thinking in the coaching world, I think there's an opportunity in these networking events to forget the whole elevator pitch and just step into coaching for a few seconds and help the person discover something about themselves in that 4-minute interaction, because you don't think they're going to remember you from that. Oh my word. They're going to talk to 30 people that night. And if you got them thinking about sleep or relationships, or just go down the list of something that matters to them and just one little pondering, they're going to remember you forever. And they may work with you at some point. So I think you might have an opportunity to take a different approach to the elevator pitch. Maybe we call it the rocket pitch instead of the elevator pitch, but whatever.
The impact.
That's right.
The impact pitch. Exactly. So here's where I'm going to just offer another side of that. Because I think while we do, I love just being present with folks and being able to have that opportunity. I love to have the opportunity to go and meet a new person and just listen to them and kind of, understand them. And I think that's part of what you're talking about there, Brad, and that makes such an impact. The other thing that really helped me in this area, though, is to have a little bit of a canned thing that I was going to say when I introduce myself. Because sometimes we can get into these situations where we don't really know what lot to say, and then we're just sort of fumbling. And so having, a couple of lines like, this is who I help, this is how I help them, and then obviously not going too heavy on it, but maybe a couple of sentences
For sure.
about what you're about so that people are oriented, because health coaching, a lot of different coaching, but especially health coaching, it's kind of a new field. And
That's a great point. Great point.
Yeah,
people are confusing us with.
What is that? What are you going to tell me to do? What are you going to tell me
You're going to do a fitness program for me, and you're going to make me run a marathon. You're going to make me eat kale. So great point, Suzy. That is critical. Excellent advice.
Yeah, 100%. So I hear, Suzy, have it for coaches who are in the private practice space, kind of smaller, trying to find clients. It's kind of having this elevator pitch of what you do to educate what health coaching is and how it's showing up in the healthcare field. And then also a creative opportunity to talk to that individual in a way that also supports the client-centered process of coaching, right? So at the end, they don't necessarily remember exactly what you do, but they remember that the impact of the conversation that you had with them.
That's good.
While having a little bit of education as well.
Yes, I think you got it there.
Yeah. And it's hard. Like you mentioned too, it's hard. You're in those situations and you're like, oh gosh, what do I say now? So Suzy, did you practice an elevator pitch? Brad, I'm curious, you too, when you're prepping, right, for these events or things or talks you're going into, was there kind of a process of prep work that went into that, talking to the mirror about the elevator pitch? What helped you feel confident going into those spaces as you are, and also feeling like you kind of have a plan?
Yeah. Well, when I first did, became board certified and really was launching truly a health and wellness practice, there were some things that I had to switch around, because in my mind, I had been in the nutrition industry. And so in my mind, being a health coach might have been more prescriptive. I'm going to talk to people and tell them what to do. And then come to find out, it's kind of wow, this is a lot deeper than that. This isn't even about, of course, having an expertise in an area is great. That's kind of a given. But the motivational, finding that intrinsic motivation, like what you talked about, Brad, that's the magic sauce. And that's all about the person and about getting into, what their challenges are. So I actually, one of the steps that I did is I went through just a very basic kind of business building program and it wasn't like a program at a college, but it was just kind of getting set up. And one of the things was finding out what my values really were around this business, and then building this kind of statement that I could say. So that was super helpful. Spending that time was very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, from our end, Leigh, I would say consider the audience. So if I'm speaking to a SHRM conference, I'm thinking HR directors, they're really concerned about turnover. And so any conversations, we're going to talk about how's that going? What does that look like? What are some of the things that have worked, that haven't worked? Because we know those engaged in coaching have lower turnover than those who don't. So that's an easy data point that relates to them. For an individual who's seeking your coaching, what is important to them? If you're talking to a benefit consultant, there's no way for them to differentiate themselves outside of price, and you never want to differentiate yourself based on price. So we can be their differentiator. So we talk about differentiation. So it's really thinking about, if it's a speaking engagement or a networking event, thinking, who am I going to connect? Who am I going to cross paths with? What matters to them? What's their ROI or VOI, value on investment? And how do we enhance that in a very simplified 30-second manner?
So I hear, do your research.
Do your homework. Yeah.
Yeah. Do your homework and a little bit of planning, so you are feeling confident in those spaces, conversations, and it's catered to meeting that population and speaking their language.
And you're going to be more confident when you do that. When you say, oh, I'll just wing it. I'm pretty good with people. I'm sure you are. But that's, again, not an excuse to not be prepared for who your audience is, what you're going to share, what the data points are that are established in the evidence that you can share with them, and maybe follow up with a link to a study or whatever it might be. So I'm glad you're good with people. Do your homework anyway.
have some talking points, have the outline, right?
Know who you're talking to.
Do some planning.
Know your audience.
So we've talked about the 4 out of the 5 key elements so far. So clear coaching identity or business identity, sustainable practices with that, value-based visibility, and relationship-centered sales. And as you all were talking about how you plan for these different events or populations of people, it brings up the 5th core element of systems. So supportive systems. So, when we think about business, we can have these ideas, we can have these thoughts, we can have these events on the calendar, and systems can be really supportive and making us feel like we're making traction at those events or feeling confident in those spaces. So what tools and systems have been game changers for you all as you've navigated these pieces of life and business?
I'm going to have to say the biggest system for me has been purely the calendar. Just purely saying, these are the things that have to be done. Brad said it earlier, you're not going to have a business if you don't go out and you talk to people. It's not going to come flying out of the sky. You're not going to build it just on social media with a couple of posts. It's got to be consistency. You've got to have like a system of, for me, I'm going to say I have a system of posting. I have employed marketing companies to kind of partner, not like have a marketing support system all the time that I'm paying a lot of money to. But I do have points where I get help in those areas where I need them. So I would say that, having some partners there, that kind of how I said, having some partners in the wellness field. I'm a coach for other companies. Also having partners in the business world as well. But that calendar of just, making sure that I'm going to carve out time to do the reach outs that I need to, the follow up that I need to, the training that I need to stay up to date on my skills as a coach, and just always, making sure that I'm providing value there. So I think I'm going to have to say the calendar is my biggest tool. I know that's very basic, but
hey, basic can be foundational, right? Suzy, I have one follow-up question to the calendar and carving out space. And then Brad, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I was thinking about, as you were talking in the calendar and carving out space for like marketing or, getting out there or going out in public to connect with people. How do you honor that time that you set aside for like maybe sometimes the things that aren't as fun, right? They're not the fun stuff in business. Like it's the things that have to kind of get done to keep the ball moving, right? Like marketing for some people, but how do you honor that space on the calendar?
I have to say, this has been a journey for me. So my entire life, I wanted to be an early riser and get stuff done in the morning. And I finally am. And the consistency of having, I also run my business at home. Almost, probably over 90% of what I do is done at home. So there's plenty of distractions and all of those kind of things. So I have my electronic calendar. And then I also have my paper calendar. And every Sunday I sit down, I have a little notes section where it's like, these are the projects that I'm working on, whether it's a blog or these people that I need to reach out to, things like that. I have every one of my, my appointments on there, as well as just the people that I meet, and I got to take them a step forward. I have my workouts on there as well, my little boxes that I got to check. And that act for me personally, that's what works. Now, everybody is different in this way, but that's what really works. And so if it's on the calendar, it's going to get done. And if it doesn't get done by Friday, it's going to probably go on either the next time. If it goes on the next week for a few weeks in a row, I kind of have to say, why is this not getting done? Is this not important? Or is it something that's, in that really important but not urgent category that I need to carve out time for? But I kind of have to do a gut check with myself and why is it on the calendar? Why did I say it was important? What has changed? And if I give something up, for instance, if I stop going to a particular group, what am I going to replace it with? I'm not allowed to just stop doing something without replacing it with something else.
I love that. Intentional. You are intentional with your time, and you constantly check in to see, okay, if this is getting pushed off, Is it important? What could make it more important? What's the barrier? I like that. The self-coaching.
Well, and
Self-coaching, yes.
yeah, I mean, think about the typical person that gets off of a exercise routine or a fitness routine. It's because something comes up and they don't force themselves to, I'm going to do something. I may not hit the gym. I'm going to at least go for a walk. Or if I'm injured, that doesn't mean I sit on the couch. That means I'm on the bike instead of running, or that means I'm swimming instead of lifting, or whatever it might be. The person that says, look, I've committed to an hour of fitness per day, whether I'm injured, traveling, busy, didn't sleep, it doesn't matter. That's the person who's fit. The one who falls off is the one who says, oh, I'm on a really good plan. Oh, I'm hurt. I'll just take a couple weeks off, et cetera, et cetera. So I love, love, love that you said that. A few things I jotted down here. First of all, everyone wants your money. Everyone. So there's so many systems that you can pay for. And Suzy mentioned marketers, people that'll market for you. And hey, we all hate marketing, so I'd love it if you'd market for me. Don't do it. Like, sometimes those make sense, but generally we can do those things. Now, when you get so busy that it's more valuable for you to be doing coaching than Instagram posts or following up on your QuickBooks or whatever else, then hire it out. That's a math problem. But most of us don't get to that point. Suzanne and I, 20 years in, still do almost all the minutia stuff that is required and is behind the scenes and nobody has any idea about. And then with that, I also like what Suzy said about this. Find the joy or bring the joy. Joy is so important to everything that we're doing. And I have a little acronym, AIM, that I use with the joy piece, because sometimes you got something you're like, really, Brad? Like, there's no joy in this. Oh, I think there probably is. So the A is your attention. Tune into what's already there. You just didn't know. Like, people say that about running all the time. Oh, I hate running. Then you're not paying attention, because the trees and the breeze and feeling your heart rate, and running may not be for you. I'm not saying everybody should run, but there's joy in it if we'll pay attention. The second one is to integrate it. So bring something fun in. I hate doing invoices. And for 20 years, I've been doing invoices. So I integrate something that's joyful into that by putting on some music that I love vinyl. So I've got a bunch of vinyl sitting in my office. And when it's invoice time, it's vinyl time. So that's fun for me. So now the invoices, I still don't go, yay, invoice day. But there's joy in it because of something I integrate into that. So try to bring those things into the things you maybe don't like. And then finally, the M is modify it. If you really hate it, maybe it gets to the point where you can modify it or do something like that. So, and Leigh, as far as your question about what's my one thing, it's some sort of customer relation, CRM system where you keep track of your conversations and who you're talking to. And for 20 years, practically every quarter, I would just go back through, and the 200 most likely people I would reach back out to. And I didn't like that. And I couldn't play music because I'm calling them half the time. So that became one of those where you're just like, this is allowing us to do what we love to do. So it's going to be 3 days every quarter, and I'm just going to buckle down, and the reward is great. And the no's that Suzy talked about earlier, out of those 200, almost all of them were no's, or maybe laters. That's okay. This would be encouraging to some folks, especially on the business side. If you're looking at working in small businesses, I would say the average amount of time that it took for clients to hire us from our first conversation to saying, we want you to provide coaching for our team, was probably 5 to 5.5 years. We've had it as long as 13 years. We've had it, occasionally you get one that's fast, but it's pretty rare. I would say median's probably 7 years and average is probably 5 years. So hopefully that's an encouragement to folks. But then that's where that runway, if we're spending a bunch of money on the front end, we may not have 5 years. So
I think you bring up such a good point that everybody wants your money. I can't even tell you how many intro conversations that I've had to some of these click funnel or whatever it is. I mean, it's been a few years, maybe, I'd say probably three years, maybe since I did the last intro call. And I'm just like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense. And then it doesn't jive with me. Like, it feels like trickery kind of. And I'm not saying that there is nobody that has success with that. And I don't want to bash that, but
for you,
but it is just a myth in my opinion. It is a myth that you can buy a program that is going to alleviate your need to have sales calls. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because
they're hiring you. They want to know you. So
all of a sudden you're the product. Yep. Like, yeah. So just thought that was my one myth about coaching businesses, because I think that it gets hit really hard on those programs.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and it speaks to like what you all were talking about with like building systems, having it feel good to a certain extent, and challenging yourself when you're not feeling as, excited about reaching out to 200 companies. So like when you are in those positions of looking for ways to motivate yourself, you're looking for a system, you're looking for a way to motivate yourself to then create the social media calendar or put the marketing, networking events in your local community on the calendar. So it's speaking to this need of you wanting to have success. And Suzy, what you're saying is like and Brad, you've got the success within you to do those things. It's just a matter of finding the systems and the mindset that allow you to do that.
Well, and remembering what we talk about as coaches. I mean, it always comes back to the cornerstones, right? Move, fuel, rest, connect. Move, fuel, rest, connect. Everything comes, like everything else is a rounding error, folks, with our health and well-being, and even our high performance situation. It's almost so. That's the other thing is, don't forget the guidance that we're bringing others through in their journey applies to us. If I'm well rested, those 200 outreaches are much more fun, much more engaging. If I'm exercising, if I'm eating well, like if we're doing the things that we're supposedly setting an example for in our communities, we're much better at all these things we're talking about.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, Brad, because one thing that has helped me, and I don't know where this would have come up in our conversation today, but putting those little micro movement pieces into my day is so energizing. So maybe it's not between every call, but multiple times a day, I'm doing push-ups. I'm, on my vibrating pad that, I'm doing my squats on, walking the talk. And so you bring up just a great point, and not only just for health and wellness coaches, this is important for everyone, but especially in the health and wellness world, we're not going to want to have those conversations with people if we're not doing it ourselves.
That's a good point too. Yeah, absolutely.
The core elements don't happen if the foundation's not there to give us the energy, purpose, and, fulfillment to do those things, and having the cornerstones. Like when we're feeling stressed, like when we were talking about systems and visibility, when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling overwhelmed, when our wellness goes to the side, we don't want to go and create social media marketing. We don't want to go into business after hours. We don't have the energy. So the foundation's not there. The elements can't be, fulfilled in business. So you guys bring up a great point that ultimately focusing on ourselves propels our business.
It does.
So as we wrap up, this has been, I think we could go on this for days. You guys are talking about like systems with health and well-being. I'm like, that could be a whole other podcast episode around like, how can, business owners create sustainability in the health and wellness space and the foundation that they're standing on to be able to be resilient in business, right? We could talk for hours on that. But as we come to a close of talking about these core elements and the experiences that you all have had, what would you say to a coach who's feeling unsure or underprepared for the business side? Like where would be your word of wisdom of where to start, how to navigate those feelings?
I would say a great place to start is to get in community with other coaches. I think having a community of of like-minded people and just being able to collaborate in a way. Maybe it's coming up with something that you're going to do together. Maybe you're going to do group coaching together, or who knows what you're going to come up with. But having a safe space where you value someone else that you're in community with is valuing the same things and speaking your language. And I would say that is a great place to start. I think also a close second as far as activity of what you can do is look at your calendar and carve out, where's an hour that I can get this thing started. Maybe you're working in another full-time job and this is like your side gig that you're building up and you have these big dreams for. Take a step. Just keep taking steps and give it that little bit of time that it deserves, because it is meaningful and it's meaningful work.
Yeah, that's good advice. I just jotted down the concept of better than yesterday. We talk about that in coaching all the time. And as a new coach, or maybe you're taking a little different direction, or maybe you've been coaching for years, but now you want to do it on the side in your own business. All the things we've talked about. So give yourself that runway. Don't spend a bunch of money on the front end. Get your first 3 or 5 clients. Get that rolling. Make sure that's going the way you want it, and you're creating a little bit of margin. Charge enough. We should have talked about this more, Leigh. Folks, there's an old saying, no margin, no mission. That is true in our personal lives. If you have no margin at the end of your month, you cannot support charities. You cannot donate to your church. You cannot support the local rescue mission because you don't have anything to give. And the same thing is true in our lives. If we are drained at the end of each day, we have nothing to give our kids, our neighbors, our spouse, our business. So be aware of those things. Step into that idea of better than yesterday. And with the charging, the market tells us what the number is. And we need to be sure that it's covering enough so we can keep doing what we're doing. Like, if we can't keep our doors open, we're not going to coach anybody. So remember that. And then the other thing I would say, I have this thing called a legacy matrix, and I don't think Leigh or Suzy have seen it. So they're like, I have no idea what he's talking about. But 2 of the 4 quadrants are the dreamer quadrant and the grinder quadrant. And we tend to lean into one of those naturally. And they're both valuable. There's a big value in going into grinder mode and doing what you need to do. There's a great value in stepping back and being in that dreamer mode and thinking about where am I going and how does this work and what's that upward aim that I'm being called to. But if we get stuck in those in those quadrants, that's where the problem is. So it's great to be in the dreamer quadrant, but it's not good to live in the dreamer quadrant. It's not good to stake our tent in the dreamer quadrant. We want to come there, create the dreams, and then move into the combination of upward aim and forward orientation, actually doing something about it. But by the same token, we can step into that grinder mode, get a whole lot done, but forget our why, forget our who we're becoming, forget all those things. So that's a topic for another day. But just realize we need both. We need the upward aim and we need the forward orientation. If we're missing one of those or both, it's not working.
We need the full runway.
Yeah.
Gates included.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It sounds like that quadrant that you're talking about, Brad, it reminds me of the cornerstones of well-being that we talk about. And maybe those are the cornerstones of business. I don't know. I feel like you're onto something there. We need to hear more.
Yeah.
Okay, so final thoughts here is a question for you all of what's the most important lesson that you've learned running a coaching business practice over the years?
Oh, wow, this is a tough one here.
I'll throw one out that hopefully will be an encouragement to folks. Listen to your mentors and guides and friends, and then step aside and decide separate from those. One of the stories I could talk about my book is when we were ready to launch, I sat down with probably the person I respect more than anyone else in the world in terms of business. He and I had worked together for a decade. We were constantly bouncing ideas off. He'd run a very successful business, and I had my business plan. I sat down with him, and he looked at it, and he said, wellness? Nobody makes money in wellness unless they sell supplements. And I remember walking away from lunch thinking, we're not selling supplements. So maybe this is a terrible idea. Maybe this is not worth it. So we ended up launching the next day anyway, and the rest is history. But I really about threw in the towel at that point. So maybe your mentor's right. Don't ignore the advice, but don't overweight that advice either from anyone. Tom Peters used to like to say, if he loved to talk about the Grateful Dead and how they were the only ones who did what they did. They weren't the best at it. They were the only ones doing it. Like nobody did what the Grateful Dead did. So they weren't competing with Journey and Boston and Rolling Stones. They were one of one. And when you're one of one, nobody thinks it's a good idea because it's never been done before. We like things we've seen before. We like things we've experienced. That's why movies, almost always, the follow-up is the way to go because you've already established Mission Impossible as a winner. So now let's do it again. You've already established Wicked sells. So let's do it again. So if you have a creative idea for your coaching business by doing that whiteboard exercise or leaning into something your heart's been telling you that you should try, and you run it by some friends or you run it by a mentor or a business coach or whatever, and they go, I don't know, they might be right, but they might simply be admitting, I've never heard of this before. So my knee-jerk reaction is, it probably won't work. They could be right. But why not find out? You have the penalty for being wrong in our business is very small because you roll out that service and it doesn't work and you've burned a month. Okay, you've burned trying to do a couple talks on the subject. Okay, that's the way it goes. I'm sorry it didn't work out. But it's not like you bought a building and it failed. It's not like you acquired a company and you're losing $3 billion. You're trying a new service line. It didn't work. Oh, it did work. Well, look at that. So
those are some amazing things that you talked about there, Brad. And I think one of the areas that really resonated with me is don't get yourself underwater right when you get going with funds.
Yes.
And I had to go because I love to shop. Like that's one of the things I like to do. So I fall prey to these things. I'm like an Instagram shopper. My kids are making fun of me all the time. I'm like, oh, I did it again. Just really have somebody that you trust that you can talk to about what you're doing, as far as laying out money and funds for your business. Because I'm telling you, I've made my business and I haven't spent a whole lot. I mean, apart from like educating myself and, continuing those kinds of things, going to conferences, stuff like that, but not huge thousands of dollars that have put me into debt. So that's a really big one. And then the last one is just that relationships aren't just something, but relationships are everything. And I have that in my office, and I look at it every day and it really does guide me.
Beautiful.
Oh. Thank you guys so much for being on this podcast. I was honored to be the host of this episode and learn from you all and hear your experience. And I think that listeners will get a lot out of it. So thank you.
Great job, Leigh. Thank you, Suzy.
Thank you, guys. This was a blast.
All right. Well, that was fun. Great job, Leigh. Great job, Suzy. I hope this was super valuable for those of you who are in that realm of trying to figure out, do I get my business going on the coaching side? Or maybe you're doing that already and you're thinking through, what do I need to be doing differently? Or maybe it sparks some idea of something you hadn't tried before. So in any case, I hope this was helpful. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and Leigh did a great job of pulling it all together for us to make it a reality. If you have any questions about coaching, if you're thinking about pursuing your board certification as a health and wellness coach, if you're thinking about moving in that direction in your career, or making it a complementary aspect to what you're doing as a physical therapist or a counselor or a physician or a nurse or an occupational therapist, whatever that might be, Catalyst Coaching, you know about us. We'd be happy to chat with you about details, talk you through what that might look like, how that fits into your career, what the training looks like. We do have 4 a year, so we've got one coming up here really soon. We keep those groups to a small size. Some of the coach training programs out there may have 100, 200 students. We generally average between 18 and 22. So a lot of personal connection, and that's really why we do what we're doing, to create that community and build on that. So if you have any questions on the coaching side, you want to look into that, or CEUs, or our annual retreat, reach out to us. CatalystCoachingInstitute.com is the website, and email is results@CatalystCoachingInstitute.com. And with that said, it's time to be a catalyst. This is Catalyst Coaching's Dr. Brad Cooper. Make it a great rest of your week, and I will speak with you soon on the next episode of the Coaching Lab podcast, or maybe over on the YouTube coaching channel.